If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
This is MINDSHOCK True Crime. You are listening to the Steven Avery series, DNA for Dummies 2. This is Bruce McGuire.
And Maxwell Powers.
And Johnny Mills.
And if you like our podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. And check us out on social media, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, Patreon. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit notifications to get updates when we release new podcasts. We have many series in the works now. So, in our previous episode, DNA for Dummies, we went over the basics of DNA testing, its reliability, and issues with the Steven Avery case. A few people pointed out that the information was a little bit incomplete in certain ways. So we're going to go into deeper explanations now that the primer has already been gone through so everybody can get a better understanding about the role of DNA and DNA testing in the Steven Avery case. By the way, Maxwell, did you understand everything in the previous episode, or was it not dumbed down enough?
It was okay. It was good.
That's good. So you know how DNA testing works now?
No, not really.
We didn't do enough good enough job then.
Yeah,
we were trying to break it down for dummies.
Well, I've always had trouble with that topic anyway in high school and everything.
DNA or genetics in general?
Genetics, yeah.
Dominant recessive genes?
I had some. Not really.
Not really.
All right, let's go over. We're going to go over the first exact test of the shin bone and the bone fragments that were supposedly matched to Teresa Halbach. Everybody keeps repeating these statements that the FBI matched it to her mother, or it's a direct descendant of her mother. That's not what they said. In the actual document, it said they couldn't exclude Teresa Halbach. Maybe they couldn't exclude Maxwell either. And there's a couple issues with even that determination. We're going to go over the actual document, and then we're also going to go over Steven Avery's blood in the RAV4. So now that the hood latch DNA has been debunked, the guilters are desperately clinging to the smear of blood in the ignition in the RAV4. So we have to address that. And once again, we're not saying he's not guilty. We're just saying the McGuire theory is that the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department was framing a man they thought was innocent.
I still think he was cloned.
I don't have a theory yet.
You don't have a theory yet? You don't have enough information? Do you know who Steven Avery is, Maxwell?
Some dude.
What about Teresa Halbach?
Poor girl. What?
Oh, you know who that is? I was just a little shocked.
Some photographer for cars.
Okay, so let's go over the actual document. Okay, so let's look at this. So this is an article from Green Bay Press Gazette, February 27th, 2007, by Andy Nelson. DNA results tainted. DNA expert, some people would say that that description would be misused. Sherry Culhane spent nearly all of Monday defending her test results that show the origin of blood and DNA found in Teresa Halbach's sport utility vehicle in 2005. Her testimony nearly doubled the half day she spent Friday detailing the only piece of DNA evidence that directly connects Halbach to Steven Avery's property. Avery, 44, is accused of killing Halbach, 25, on Halloween 2005 and burning her body to hide the crime. Monday was the 11th day of testimony and was expected to be a 6-week homicide trial. Avery's 17-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey, also is charged in Halbach's death and is scheduled for trial in April. At the core of the issue Monday was a test that revealed Halbach as the lone contributor of genetic material found on a bullet fragment recovered in Avery's garage. The piece of lead was pulled from a crack in Avery's garage 4 months after the investigation began in early November 2005. Culhane's own DNA was found in a negative control sample processed along with the bullet fragment sample. The control sample is supposed to be void of any DNA and is used to validate the test's accuracy. Are you following, Maxwell?
No, not really.
Maxwell Army. Sherry Culhane contaminated the DNA results. She got her own DNA.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I saw that.
She shot the bullet?
Episode.
I don't know. She was there.
She shot it.
She killed Teresa Halbach?
Her DNA was on it.
Huh, that's weird. So Culhane's own DNA was found in a negative control sample, processed along with the bullet fragment sample. The control sample is supposed to be void of any DNA and is used to validate the test's accuracy. Culhane speculated that she contaminated the sample while talking to trainees during the DNA extraction process. Now, here's a major issue. If you're doing a critical test on a piece of it, like, why are you training people at that time? Like, is it so inconsequential?
It was a training session on how to frame Steven Avery.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was.
How to do frame ups in the lab.
Frame ups in Manitowoc.
But why would you still contaminate with your own DNA? Like, is she so incompetent she can't even do the frame up? Like,
Yeah.
she messed up the frame up?
This is how you void.
She's really interesting to watch on the stand because she always
Because of
looks
her
like,
hair?
No, she
Her
always looks
80s
like she's
haircut?
about to, well, but she always looks like she's about to laugh. So like whenever like she's getting questioned, I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
some body language experts would
Uncomfortable.
describe that as people who do something wrong. They have like those micro expressions and smiles and like. They're
Oh
about to
yeah, I
laugh.
remember.
We're going to be doing detailed
but
analysis on
I don't
everybody
see
in
that
this
with
case.
her though. I think she's just being like she's kind of amused about the whole court system. I think the court procedures.
Is she amused that she still has a job and she still gets paid?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, maybe.
Well, here's the thing. Or is she the greatest or is she a genius at the level of Steven Avery, where she was threatened to be involved in this cover-up, and she contaminated the sample as a way to try to help Steven Avery to get the results thrown out? Is she,
She
another
got him
one of
off
these,
the first time, but waited a year.
or was she she wanted to do it earlier, but she was delayed by someone forcing her to be delayed, and this is her way of getting back at Manitowoc and the state. And
Wait,
she's
what's-
trying to help Avery by contaminating the samples. And then she just scheduled a trainee session to try to make it even more botched so people would throw out the results. And she didn't think that everyone else would be either so crooked and or illogical and or dumb to accept these obviously contaminated results. Where they accepted it anyway. So maybe that's why she's always looks like she's laughing on the stand, because she can't believe that everybody's this dumb.
It's interesting what the comment or the phone call she got from one of the, I forget who it was, but one of the police officers. He was like oh, make sure you get him for the garage or something like that. Do you remember that in the documentary?
Make sure you connect Steven Avery. Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane. Was the garage or something like that? And she had it written down. In parentheses.
Well, we went
Yeah.
over it. We went
Yeah.
over it. We went over it.
Yeah, Zellner tested that bullet again, season 2. They found wood fragments on the bullet, no bone fragments. They just found a bunch of wood.
It's a magic bullet, just like the JFK
Apparently,
assassination.
Halbach had a wooden skull, I guess, if
That's
they only found
crazy.
wood on it. Because supposedly she was shot in the head, and that's how she died. But the bullet didn't have any bone fragments, just wood.
So Culhane speculated that she contaminated the sample while talking to trainees during the DNA extraction process. I mean, they can't even do the process when there's no trainees present. I mean, it's kind of an important case. Why not have the trainees on something that's not have all these lives hanging in the balance that are putting people away for life? Culhane testified that she was able to make a ruling on the DNA found on the bullet after discussing it with her supervisor. So someone told her she could make a ruling? So words are now trumping science, a very interesting development in the Steven Avery case. I felt this was probative evidence, Culhane said. I felt it was appropriate because I could not go back and re-extract. I was stuck with what I had. I couldn't redo anything to remedy the situation. Culhane admitted it was the only time in her 23-year career that she has deviated from protocol to make a conclusive ruling. So now she admitted that this ruling was not made based on protocol, and yet people are still clinging desperately to say that there's evidence that Steven Avery did it because they found her DNA on the bullet and the bone fragments and his blood's in the RAV4. We are going to see if any of these arguments stand up to logical scrutiny, because so far they have not. And once again, for people who are having trouble with what we're saying, we have no clue whether Steven Avery did it or not. I wasn't there. Were you there, Maxwell?
I'm working on my psychic powers.
Maxwell Powers.
So I don't know. Maybe he did do it. Once again, if he's split personality, genius, between genius and mental deficient, it's possible his other personality doesn't know that he did it. Again, I'm not saying this is anywhere near a good possibility. It is probably as remote as it gets. The deviation I requested was appropriate for this situation, and the results were correct, Culhane says. How does she know they were correct? Buting suggested Culhane made her results fit a request by prosecutors to find DNA evidence that connected Halbach to Avery's property. This is what you just said, Maxwell. In this case, Mr. Tom Fassbender, a lead investigator, asked you to try to put Teresa Halbach in the defendant's garage or house, Buting said. This is definitely an up-and-up investigation, right? They're not trying to find. They're definitely trying to find who really did it instead of trying to make sure that an alleged victim is in the alleged suspect who they want to be the killer, even though they know he's probably not.
That's kind of crazy how he actually said that. It's crazy.
Any request from the investigator had no bearing whatsoever on my examination or my results, Culhane said. So now we're supposed to believe her? No bearing whatsoever, Buting challenged, and yet for the first time in your career, you deviate from protocol to find one piece of evidence, the only piece of evidence in this entire case that links Teresa Halbach with Mr. Avery's garage or house.
Can you explain how she deviated from protocol again?
Because she contaminated the blood sample.
Oh, all right.
Weren't you paying attention?
I guess not.
The exchange drew an objection from the prosecutors, who said it was argumentative, and Manitowoc County Circuit Judge Patrick Willis sustained the objection. After Monday's hearing, Buting said prosecutors cannot pick and choose which results they like. The contaminated test should have been excluded and is a sign of a bigger problem. It's like you open up a microwave dinner and you see a fly in the little peach cobbler. Are you going to eat the Salisbury steak? Buting said after Monday's hearing. I hope not. Most of us aren't. You find contamination in one area, you're going to find it in the entire test, and that's why the protocol says throw it out. To me, this is indicative of just how much effort has gone into trying to nail this man. Also at issue Monday was the plausibility that Avery's DNA was planted inside Halbach's RAV4. Culhane was the analyst who found and sampled a handful of blood spots inside the vehicle. In fact, where you found those 6 stains on November of 2005, the ones that were later attributed to Mr. Avery's DNA, one could have planted simply by opening 2 doors on that vehicle, Buting asked. I really can't comment on that, Culhane said. If someone was to plant Mr. Avery's blood in that vehicle to get those 6 stains, they would need to open the driver's door, right? Buting asked. Yeah, Culhane said. Buting's cross-examination continued to work the angle that Avery's DNA was planted. He asked if the DNA found on the Toyota key recovered in Avery's bedroom could have been rubbed with another item, allowing the transfer of DNA. Buting's questions suggested a toothbrush or a swab used to collect a DNA standard. In my experience, toothbrushes are not a real good source of DNA, Culhane said, but added that a transfer might be possible. It's very difficult to get a profile from a toothbrush. There are many ways, in fact, many personal items someone might rub against a key that might also shed a deposit, a low amount of DNA, like such as what you found on this key, Buting pressed. Yes, it's possible, Culhane said. Buting cut off her response and followed with, you cannot tell whether the DNA that was found on the key was planted there by somebody or not, can you? No, Culhane said. Buting also emphasized that Culhane did not find Halbach's DNA on a key she reportedly used daily. It was the first in a litany of places Halbach's DNA was not found and became issues in Buting's cross-examination. Halbach's DNA was not present on handcuffs, leg irons. Well, it's also funny they keep referring to it as handcuffs and leg irons. Weren't these like little plastic toys from like a sex shop? Remember we discussed this before.
I don't know. They
This
keep
is
saying
Maxwell's
leg
area of
irons,
expertise.
so I'm thinking like it's iron, no?
They were like if it was some kind of cheap metal like tin or something, there were these little things that you could easily get out of. So that was another problem.
Were they furry?
Well, those were Jandas, right? The furry ones. I think Stevens were the regular ones. Were there 2 different sets of leg irons?
I don't know.
Or supposed leg irons?
Pink furry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I like that.
headboard and carpeting from Avery's bedroom. So Halbach's DNA was not present anywhere in the bedroom or the house. A mixture of DNA was found on the handcuffs and leg irons seized from Avery's bedroom. It was Avery's own DNA and a sample from another unidentified person, Culhane said. Interesting. All right.
So he tied himself up. Practice.
Well, what is he doing with his
jail
clone?
time.
Is he doing tests with his clone? If there was a clone, did he use the clone to intentionally commit the murder? Or does he have a split personality and his genius personality was the one that used the clone and his regular mentally deficient personality does not even have knowledge of the clone or his other
There's too
personality?
many plot points for a movie.
Well, that's what would have to work to make the state's case make sense.
And the bones they found are the clone's bones. He got tired of the clone Avery, so he burned them up.
Which personality did that?
It doesn't matter.
All right. I'm going to go through now the state of Wisconsin court document. So here's what we have. January 29, 2007, the defense received a report dated January 12, 2007 from the DNA Analysis Unit 2 of the FBI lab, Exhibit 1. The report states that the specimens were received on 3 separate dates in November and December of 2006, apparently for the purpose of performing DNA or mitochondrial DNA tests. The specimens were identified only as bone fragments and given an FBI lab number and designation as items Q11, Q12, Q13, Q14 to 14.8, and Q15 to 45. No further, or Q14-14.8 and Q15-45. No further description of the items examined is given. It is impossible to tell if they are bone fragments found in the burn pit behind Steven Avery's evidence, the burn barrel behind the Janda Dassey residence, or some other location entirely. It is unclear whether some, all, or none of the bone fragments had been previously determined by the state's forensic anthropologist to be human or not. In short, the defense has no way of knowing from this cryptic report what was sent and examined by the FBI lab. There's also allegations that if these tests were all manipulated or intentionally botched, they could have also switched labels on the pieces of evidence, and who's to know otherwise? I really don't get why all the so-called guilters are clinging on faith that none of these were altered or switched, even by accident. Like, let's say there is no conspiracy and they were accidentally switched. Clerical errors do happen. So you're just going to trust and take on blind faith that the sample was what they said it was? It's kind of weird. Don't you need more than blind faith to convict people? Maxwell, thoughts?
I concur.
In addition, although the report states that due to the condition of the submitted items, no mitochondrial DNA examinations were conducted, it does not say what conditions caused the analyst to choose not to perform a mitochondrial DNA examination. It is unknown whether the condition is one that existed at the time the specimens were first discovered, or whether the condition developed after the specimens came into the custody of law enforcement authorities. Further, it appears from the report that some DNA examinations were conducted, but the results are conspicuously not reported. The report concludes that the items will be returned to Wisconsin along with the processed DNA generated from the samples. The processed DNA can be found in a package marked for refrigeration. Thus, clearly, the specimens were processed and DNA was generated. The results may be exculpatory, since if they were inculpatory, they would have certainly been noted. Another interesting point is like a lot of results from all these tests have never been released. Why not? And here's another thing. So Zellner wants to retest a lot of these things, and especially the RAV4 blood. Like, why won't they let her retest it? If he's really guilty, the truth is not afraid of investigation. Why are they letting her spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this appeal if it's so obvious that he's guilty? If it's that much of a slam dunk, up DNA evidence, he did it. Why not let her independently test the DNA evidence? Here's a bigger issue. Is independent testing important? Or can you just trust the people looking to convict? I mean, in order to be objective, you need third parties. You need independent parties. It's kind of strange how people just put the kibosh on that.
Especially when they're like in that, that lawsuit. That lawsuit's going on with Avery, and then they're still doing. Yeah, that's weird. That should definitely be like a third party lab or something doing it.
And even if, now let's say certain people, they immediately jump to, so like the anti-conspiracy realists that think conspiracy theorists are just crazy loons, they always jump to, oh, well, it would be too many people involved. So they're willing to ignore all science, all logic, all evidence, just because there'd have to be too many people involved. I mean, it's kind of weird how they use that as the metric. Not science, not logic. They use the only metric they have whether determining it's true. Like, the cognitive dissonance is so extreme, they can't accept that more than one or two people would ever do anything bad in cahoots. Like, it's kind of strange. There's a difference between a conspiracy theory and a factually proven conspiracy. Conspiracy happens all the time. Why bad people act alone? Like, it's kind of weird how the people who don't believe in conspiracies, they really are that naive. They think bad people only do things by themselves. They would never pay anybody off. They would never have a buddy who's also a bad person.
That's what people think, or like what?
I mean, that's what I've seen not just in the Avery case, but in a lot of these
like
weird,
it's always just one person.
Even in the Maura Murray case, they're like, there's no way a couple of police officers could have been involved. It's like, they're like, oh yeah, there's definitely bad police officers out there, but they only act alone. They never, ever, ever can get anyone to cover for them. And here's the thing they don't even consider. Blackmail is a thing. If people know each other really well, the two, let's say there's 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 bad police officers, or even 10, doesn't matter, whatever. They all do their own little things that they consider okay to do, whether extortions of all kinds. So if a bad cop asks another bad cop to cover for him and the other bad cop doesn't want to risk it, if they have any kind of dirt on that cop, they'd be like, you better help me or I'm letting this out. So it's like this whole web of conspiracy. How is that unlikely? That doesn't seem it's just so it's so weird how illogical people just write it off completely, and they're willing to go through all of these extreme straw grasping, every fallacy under the sun, and cling to these like obviously botched results, and they go to any lengths to defend the fact that their belief. They go through any lengths to defend their belief that all these people wouldn't be involved. And the other thing that for some reason their cognitive dissonance refuses to allow them to consider, most of these people probably are not in on any kind of conspiracy. If a group of people, let's say 5 to 10 people, they planted the evidence, whatever, all these other texts, they're just testing the evidence that there is. If labels were switched, once again, by only this small group of people, these other honest texts, they would never know about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no grand conspiracy involving hundreds of people. It's just a couple people. It might be 10. It might even be 20. Nobody's alleging there's hundreds of people that are in on it. And let's say there were hundreds of people that were in on it. If they told him, oh, we know this guy's guilty, but the evidence is not there, so we have to fabricate it. Like, you don't want to be on, like, don't you believe that's right? Doesn't Teresa Halbach deserve justice? Like, you can emotionally, people are just emotional more than logical, so you can easily guilt trip someone to go along with the conspiracy if you can get them to believe that Steven Avery is guilty. So if they say, we know he did it, we just can't prove it, just help us out with this or this, then at that point, what are they going to do? Especially if it's a superior? Are they going to say no? Are they going to report the superior? Now they're going to get in trouble. Now, and then if these people are dangerous and they're like, oh, look, we killed all these other people or whatever, we're going to, you don't want to be, or even something a little bit more innocuous, like you don't want to be on our bad side. Even just that. The cops tell them, then isn't the innocent text go along with it? So it's really, I don't know, like it's so strange, the illogical graspings of legitimizing this evidence. Like, maybe he did do it, but how anybody could accept this evidence as legitimate is mind-boggling, mind-shocking, if you will. Okay, so moreover, it should be noted that the most recent FBI report makes reference to items beginning with the designations Q11 and runs up to Q45. The only other FBI DNA analysis unit report received by the defense, dated January 17, 2006, and attached as Exhibit 2, refers only to one item, and it is given the designation Q1. The obvious implication is that at least 9 other specimens were examined by the FBI with designations Q2 through Q10, but no report of those findings has been provided to the defense. And we didn't even get into false positives. Like, when you have such small amount of DNA, the different tests can yield different results within different thresholds. Now, without establishing those thresholds for analysis clearly, it's hard. Like, they're asking everybody to take it on faith that the report says what it says it says. Maxwell, you're a blind faith kind of guy?
You must be crazy.
Mr. Avery hereby demands the production of those FBI DNA examinations and any other results of DNA tests performed by the FBI on any and all specimens sent for review in this case. Even if the results are deemed inconclusive by the state, such findings are nevertheless be potentially exculpatory to the defense. In addition, the report of mitochondrial DNA examinations done on the single charred remains referenced in attached Exhibit 2 insufficiently discloses information required under State versus Revels. The report does conclude that, quote, Teresa Halbach cannot be excluded as the source of the Q1 charred remains, end quote. But no further opinions are given. What does that mean, Maxwell? She can't be excluded. The spin put on that statement's kind of insane, don't you think? For all of these people to go out, oh yeah, DNA remains match Teresa Halbach. Nope, Avery's guilty. Wait a second. Aren't these claims subject to any kind of examination? Or once again, are we just supposed to take on blind faith that not only the test was legit, but that the report of the test was legit? This is a perfect example. The FBI said they cannot exclude her as the source. That's a little different than saying 100% confirmed or even 99.9% confirmed match. Not to mention, once again, you would need to do that test like with false positives and all these things. There are glitches in these tests. They are not infallible, and we're going to get into another major issue in one moment. So the report goes on to discuss a small population base of mitochondria DNA currently available to the FBI, but the author provides no explanation or opinion that can be derived from the results. Mr. Avery thus moves the court to prevent any testimony from the DNA analyst in Exhibit 2, Douglas Hares, other than his opinion that Teresa Halbach cannot be excluded as the source of the charred remains. The state failed to disclose any further relevant subject matter that this proposed expert is expected to provide, so any opinions beyond that single conclusion would be in violation of the state's statutory obligations. Finally, the defense notes that there are 3 expert witnesses listed on the state's witness list for whom no reports of any kind have been provided. Those are Carl Adrian, Eric Smith, those 2 work for the FBI, and Robin Cotton. Any testimony from these witnesses must be excluded as the state failed to timely comply with 971.23 by the December 15, 2006 deadline sent by the court. Okay, so the specimens were received November 8th, 2006, November 14th, 2006, and December 27th, 2006. Is that kind of strange that they spread them out while sending it? Did they mix and match labels, and like what are they doing? Okay, so here's the remarks from the report of examination from the actual FBI laboratory. This is their report. Due to the conditions of the submitted Q11, Q12, Q13, Q14 through Q14.8, and Q15 to Q45 bone fragments, no mitochondrial DNA examinations were conducted. The submitted items will be returned under separate cover along with the processed DNA generated from the samples. Okay. So this report is dated January 17th, 2006, from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Quantico, from the FBI laboratory. Reference communications dated November 16th, 2005. The items listed, date specimens received November 23rd, 2005. The items listed below were examined in the DNA Analysis Unit 2. Q1, charred remains. K1, buccal swabs from Karen Halbach. This report contains the result of the mitochondrial DNA examinations. Results of examinations. Mitochondrial DNA sequences were obtained from the Q1 charred remains and the K1 buccal swab identified as coming from Karen Halbach, the identified mother of Teresa Halbach. The mitochondrial DNA sequences obtained from Q1 and K1 are the same, with the exception of position 320. At this position, the presence of cytosine was observed in the Q1 charred remains. In specimen K1, evidence both a cytosine and a thymine were characterized at position 320. So it is not an exact match. Due to the closely related sequences obtained from specimens Q1 and K1, Teresa Halbach cannot be excluded as the source of the K1 charred remains. So they're basically saying that they are closely related. What does that mean exactly? That this person was a relative of Karen Halbach. How close a relative, we don't know, or possibly not a relative due to the following information. The results of the examination continues. Searching the mitochondrial DNA population database The mitochondrial DNA population database currently available to the FBI laboratory, CODIS plus MitoPopStats version 1.3, containing 5,071 individuals. Is that a lot of individuals? There's over 300 million people in the U.S. Is 5,071 individuals a lot of individuals, Maxwell?
Yeah, that's a lot. It's like 3 high schools.
There's over 300 million people in the U.S.
I said that's, I don't know.
Maybe that's just one system they use, or is that the only one?
Well, they use that's what they use, yeah.
Just the CODIS?
Well, plus the pop stats.
Yeah, 5,000. That's not a lot.
Oh, okay. Relative to the world population, I get it.
Well, let's say United States. We're not going to insinuate someone flew in.
Like,
Yeah,
wouldn't
there's
you
over
think,
there's over 325 million
you
people in
never
the
know.
U.S.
But you think that people that have been to jail,
You
right?
don't.
Like people that have been to prison have taken their DNA, right? They have their DNA.
Yes.
So there's only 5,000 people in prison right
Well,
now.
no, that's how much they put in the system. Obviously, the judicial system has way more than that, but that's not what they were using for this match.
Wait, there's only 5,000 DNA?
Are you paying attention, Maxwell?
Nah, I missed that part. I didn't know you were talking about.
5,071 individuals. So
In the
searching
system.
searching positions 16024 through 16365 and 73-340, the mitochondrial DNA sequence obtained from the specimens Q1 and K1, including all 4 nucleotides A, C, G, and T at position 320, has been observed in the following major population groups. So they had 0 number of observations among African Americans, but the individuals in the database, only 1,148. So of those individuals, 0 observations. Upper bound frequency estimate 0.26%. Caucasian, 0. 1,814 individuals in the database. Upper bound frequency estimate 0.17%. Hispanic, 0 individuals in database, 759. 0.39% frequency. Here's the thing, though. The result of the test itself is also strange because if there's not that much DNA or the DNA quality of the sample is not that good, how accurate is the result that it even matched the sequence of K1? And even so, there is a slight difference. There is an exception at 320, position 320. So the submitted items are retained in the FBI laboratory. The final disposition will be addressed in separate communication. Okay, so can we conclude irrefutably that these are Teresa Halbach's remains?
So it could be anybody in her family, right?
Well,
but it could also be
depe-
a bunch of other people.
Well, it could also be anybody.
Yeah.
But let's, if we assume, once again, we can assume that there was enough DNA for there to not be a false positive match, because once again, you have to factor the threshold, the sensitivity of the test. Like, everything is an estimate, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So they could have gotten other positions inaccurately, but it returned with this result. Now, there's also a couple other factors. If there is a conspiracy, they could have published the results as whatever they wanted. So, for example, let's say they did the test several times, and the other, like, because there's a lot of results not published, and this was the only time, like, the other tests showed no match in other positions because the threshold was small. So on one test, it came back one way, and another test, it came back another way. And they specifically sent back the test that was the closest match, which still wasn't identical because of the position 320.
I mean, it would be a little different, though, right? Compared to her mom? It wouldn't match exactly?
Yes.
So that's fine that the 320 is off, right? Like
Slightly, yeah, it is fine. But if it wasn't off, it would just be better evidence.
Yeah.
So if we accept the test as legitimate, all it tells us is that there was a relative of Karen Halbach. So that opens the door to cousins. How distant? I don't know. So it opens the door pretty wide. So can we say it was Teresa Halbach? No, we can't. That's the whole point.
So they can't use her DNA somehow, like from her house?
They could, yeah.
Wouldn't that match exactly? Like, so they were saying
they never compared it.
couldn't-
Did they ever compare it to her? That's another interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know.
They compared it to Karen Halbach. Why are we not doing it? Well, I think they might have tried. They said there wasn't enough DNA in the samples they were comparing it to.
I don't know. I feel like a toothbrush probably would have a lot of DNA on it, right? But then Culhane said it doesn't.
All right, there's quite a few problems with the RAV4 DNA. So, according to Sherry Culhane, when she first saw the RAV4 on the 7th, it had already been photographed. She started processing the vehicle and noticed stains, which she started processing. So, there's the cherry Pepsi can in the vehicle. You know about that, Maxwell, right?
I have no idea about that.
This is item A14, Maxwell Army. So this was recovered from the cup holder by the driver's side, and this is Exhibit 293.
I feel like I'm in the jury right now.
Maxwell should be on the jury. I wonder the questions he would ask. The prosecution or the defense would tell him something, and he'd be like, wait, what?
Who's Steven Avery? Is that Gregory Allen?
Oh, man. Is Zellner Steven Avery's wife? That was one of your questions on the last podcast.
Oh man.
You never know when he gets out. He could
Have you
get
ever
with
been-
Zellner.
Have you ever been on a jury, Maxwell?
I got a postcard once, and then
You forgot about it?
no,
Wait,
actually,
a postcard from
actually,
an inmate? Postcard from an inmate, or what do you
No,
mean?
postcard to be a juror
Yeah, I don't know if
And,
that's called a postcard. Is that called a postcard?
or whatever notification, and
Alright.
they
Notification
just
card.
says that you go to jail if you don't show
Yeah.
up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you
but
just
didn't
ignored
go?
it? What'd you
didn't
do?
go?
It was last minute canceled or something like that.
Huh. I was gonna
alright.
say, because they could get a warrant on it and arrest you.
I think Maxwell
Yeah.
should be a lawyer.
Contempt
Wait,
of
who's
court.
my client again?
Oh,
Wait, am I defending Gregory Allen or Stephen Avery? The judge would be like, wait,
Oh,
what?
man.
Okay, so in Exhibit 300, you can also see the cherry can, the cherry Pepsi can in the front. See?
Yeah.
This is from the back.
Wait, what is that?
The-
What is
The
Pepsi
RAV4.
Yeah, but what are you showing me? The cherry can?
You can see the can
Okay.
Exhibit A.
Yeah, but why show me a different angle?
to show that can was there.
That's it. I mean,
Okay.
I don't
So
know, the other
Sherry
angle was better.
testifies that she collects the can herself to develop a DNA profile. She swabs I guess she's in the middle of processing the RAV4. She's also swabbing this can. She places it in a rack to air dry to get a DNA sample. So she's collecting the can after all the photography is done. So if we see how far the can, so we can't see the can in Exhibit 13 with the blood near the ignition, supposedly Steven Avery's blood.
The can should be there.
Well, it might be there, but we can't see it because
Okay.
of where the shifter. I would think you'd be able to see it because it comes up to the knob part of the shifter.
I gotta see the angle. The other one, I don't remember.
Yeah, I just looked at it myself. It comes
Oh
up.
wait, what's the point? Like somebody planted the can, or like what?
Well, no, they planted the blood. So you see the can comes up pretty close to the knob of the shifter.
Okay. Wait, so why would that mean they planted the blood?
So the question is, when did they plant the blood?
Okay.
So was it there when they first discovered the vehicle? Did they plant the blood in the DNA lab? Did they plant it while they were transporting the RAV4? Why is Ken Kratz following the RAV4 when they were removing it from the property?
He's
That's very-
following it.
Oh, you didn't know that? We talked about that.
I don't. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Somebody did they drive it or take it
Yeah,
off?
they drove it off the property, and Ken Kratz just happened to leave the property at the same exact time and followed
Damn,
it.
they drove the car out of
Yeah.
there. Isn't that? Should have put it like a tow or something.
Oh, no, they had it in the back. Yeah, they had it in the back of a truck.
Okay.
And the driver of the truck left, and Ken Kratz followed. You know who Ken Kratz is, Maxwell?
Yeah, who the hell is that? wait, who is he? Ken Kratz. I like that name.
So here, was everything photographed before the processing or after? So Graffi is the photographer. He took the picture and testified to it on November 6, 2005. And in Exhibit 13, you can see the whole indent, and the can should be there, so it's not. And you can also see the shadow of the shifter, so there's no can blocking the shadow. So in another report, they referred to the can being on the floor of the vehicle. There's a lot of inconsistencies here. So here's the other problem. So Graffi, the photographer, did swabbed bloodstains. He's a photographer.
Okay.
So Stalky, the tech, told him to do this. He's a photographer. Why is he doing blood swabs? Does this make any sense to you, Maxwell?
Yeah, it's messed up. Why is he taking swabs?
Wait, why is the car just there covered with branches? A lot of these things do not make sense. Stalky says in his testimony that the presumptive tests were done, but not by me. So so they were just done at the ignition switch and the cargo area. So this was supposedly these tests. Supposedly they were all doing this at 1 a.m. at the lab too. Who was around at 1 a.m. to do these tests? Pam Stern said, this is July 19th, 2006, Motion, page 261. I was actually looking at the VIN 17 number when she was trying to open the doors. And was that just the front passenger and front driver side door to your knowledge? I'm not sure. Okay, take note of anything else inside the vehicle. There was a pop can on the floor on the passenger side in the front. Did you look under the vehicle? I don't recall. So Pam Stern, in pretrial testimony, said the can was on the floor. Passenger side, not driver side. What does that tell us, Maxwell?
The can was contaminated by other stuff? Is that what you're saying?
Well, who put it in? Why is it in the holder on the driver's side?
On a photo and
on the photos, and Pam Stern's testimony said it was on the floor passenger side. And then it's not even there in the shot of the ignition key, ignition blood smear that's supposedly
That's an
Avery's.
interesting question.
Was there a second can?
Don't see it.
Huh.
So the other issue is, was it locked or unlocked? So the police said it was locked to be like, see, we didn't plant nothing. It was locked. But if it was unlocked, it could have been planted then and there. Yeah, a lot of weird, strange things with the can, the vehicle, everything. So here's the deal. If they did plant the evidence, when did they plant it? So Pam Stern, once again, led by God to find the exact RAV4, supposedly the exact one. We'd have to go into that as well.
She couldn't find the VIN number on the car. It took her a while to find it.
Huh. We'll go into the strangeness with that, but
maybe she put it on there.
So she finds it. So she's Halbach's cousin and Pagel's cousin, Sheriff Pagel's cousin.
And she's a private investigator,
yeah.
right?
So they find it. Now they put a tarp over it. Like, what's going on? Because it was raining for a while. What's going on under the tarp? Now they take the tarp off, and then they haul it away in a closed trailer. And Sunday morning, it's opened. So if it was locked, and then how did they take photos of it on the inside? So the notes, the bloodstains.
The door was unlocked, or was it locked?
The police said it was locked.
They found the key after, though.
What?
Didn't they find the key in Avery's house like a while later? How'd they get into the car if it was locked?
No. They said it was locked.
So they broke it open?
No, it was probably open the whole time, always. They just said it was locked. So they were like, oh, we couldn't plant nothing. It was locked. But look, so Stalky, his handwritten notes about the bloodstain he found in the RAV4 are dated November 7th. So what happened on November 6th? Culhane arrives on the 7th. So she does the presumptive tests all over again. Goffey is from the same state lab, and so is Stalky. But they didn't tell Culhane they already did these tests. And where are the swabs that Graffi took? So what happened with those? So some of the trial photos shown to the jury must have been from different time periods, and they're being presented as the same time period. For what purpose, Maxwell? For what purpose? Some people say they're different cans, and then one photo, the napkin around the can isn't even there.
Sometimes they're different cars, too.
What are you saying, Johnny? Is the RAV4 Teresa's RAV4? Are we taking on faith?
Wait, you're saying there was a tissue and then it was gone?
From the Pepsi can, yeah. In some photos, there's no tissue. or napkin around it.
Do you think she had a permanent
That's
cold?
kind of messed up. Did they bring this up, or is this like Zeller is working on this? That's weird.
Yeah, they tarped it up, right? They put a tarp around the car.
Yeah, at one point. And who knows what was done under the tarp.
Yeah.
Then they put it in a closed trailer. Nobody knows what was done there.
It's
Then
like
it was taken to the
it's
lab
like a
at 1
magic
a.m.
show.
Yeah.
It's like
The
a magic show.
show.
They
Make
put
it
on
a
a tarp.
genius.
And
The magic show.
They do a little switcheroo with the car.
Switcheroo with a lot of things.
Look at the branches. I've never seen this picture before, actually.
With the tarp.
the two branches
I've
in
seen
the back.
tarp-
That's funny.
I've seen the tarp pictures, but not this specific one.
Let me see.
With the little branches.
So here's the other thing. So Ken Kratz is the special prosecutor, but why was a special prosecutor even assigned to the case if Teresa Halbach wasn't even dead at that point, declared dead? She was just missing. Yet a special prosecutor was already assigned. This case doesn't even exist yet. Yet Ken Kratz is already assigned, already in play, and following the RAV4 to the state lab. Why, Maxwell? Why?
I don't know. I don't even know who he is.
I just said who he is. He's a special prosecutor.
Uh,
Yeah, Ken Kratz showed up November 5th at 3:26 p.m. Greisbach and Rower arrived at 3:32 p.m. They were both deposed in the civil suit. And they banned the Manitowoc County coroner because of conflict of interest. And yet, all these other people with a real conflict of interest are allowed on the scene.
The only way it should be done. If you want to plant it.
So there were actually 3 prosecutors there by 1 p.m. And they started the log at 2:25 p.m., conveniently. And he also called it a homicide scene. So between 1 and 3 p.m., it was a missing persons investigation. So how did he call it a homicide scene? Why would he do that? Unless he has foreknowledge of the frame-up and where it's all going. Do you know who Ken Kratz is yet, Maxwell?
he's a prosecutor.
Some prosecutor. So there's also an hour and a half of unaccounted time where the RAV4 is being moved to the state lab from Avery's yard, from the salvage yard, and Ken Kratz is for some reason following this transport. Why? Why, Maxwell? Why?
I don't know. They're not even supposed to be around that place, right? That's crazy.
No, how many cases does a special prosecutor show up at a crime scene and follow vehicles to a lab?
Now, who reported that he followed? Like, who said that? Must have been somebody.
He probably said it.
Well, Ken Kratz left Avery Salvage Yard on November 5th at the exact same time as Nick Mersberger, the man driving the RAV4 to the crime lab on the enclosed trailer. Here's another issue. Why is the metadata not presented with the photos of the RAV4? The evidence photos
That's
presented
an
in the case?
interesting question.
It's a very interesting question. If there's nothing to hide.
Because the SD card was found in the car, right? But
we're
the
not
camera
talking
was...
about we're not talking about that.
What?
Evidence photos
Oh,
of
gotcha.
the soda can.
Yeah.
We don't have the timestamps on any of those, because if they're different timestamps,
Is it common practice to publish those with all those?
I would think so. Yeah.
They should make that mandatory.
Because otherwise, we have no idea
Yeah,
when they
you
were
don't know.
taken.
Yeah, yeah.
Before,
It could be,
after
yeah.
the disappearance.
It's crazy. That should be on a blockchain.
So some people think that the judges were tricked by this because they don't even know about metadata. I don't know. Does an average judge know about metadata? Does the average person sitting at home? We need to make a podcast, Metadata for Dummies.
Yeah, probably not. Kratz is probably like, don't worry about the metadata.
So are we also supposed to take on blind faith that these photos were taken when they said they were taken, even though the people can't even keep they can't even keep their own straight timeline of what was taken, when the swabs were done? There's all this stuff disappearing from
Disappearing, I like that one.
disappearing from the evidence log.
Yeah.
So here's what some people think, that anything that didn't match Steven Avery's planted DNA or Teresa Halbach was unidentified, and those areas of the vehicle were wiped clean of any kind of evidence, fingerprints, DNA of the real killer. So that's why there's all the shady stuff with before and after photographs and all that. because there could have been a mixture. Once again, if they dumped the car on his property and he did move the car for whatever reason in the drunken stupor, as Johnny Mills thinks it might be possible, if he did touch the vehicle or he didn't touch it all. Here's another thing. We touched on this again. Okay, is it really that suspicious for a salvage yard to crush a vehicle?
No.
Now, at the time she went missing, sure, some people would be like, yeah, well, it was at the time she went missing. Okay, that's less suspicious than covering the actual vehicle with your blood in it with a couple of branches. That's a little bit more suspicious than crushing a car that there would be no trace of. Like, these guys are in the car crushing business. So Avery is the greatest criminal genius mastermind in all of history in his ability to wipe down the garage and put all the dust and grime back. But he can't crush a car? Like, that's what he does. It's just kind of weird, don't you think, Maxwell?
Yeah. Someone mentioned on the YouTube comments that it takes like a lot of work to get the car crushed. Is that
not really?
Is
you
that
don't
relevant?
Well, it depends. If you're trying to salvage the parts, you could pull the parts out. You could pull the engine out. You don't have to though. You could just crush the whole thing whole. But regardless of it's whether a lot of work or not, that's what this guy does.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he couldn't do it. The work was minimal.
Yeah. Huh.
So here's the other issue. Nobody reported the blood in the RAV4, even when looking at it with flashlights. So if they took Steven Avery's blood swabs on the 5th, and the RAV4 was taken to the state lab in Madison at 1 a.m., they could have applied it then and there in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the other thing. All right, let's look at this Newsweek article. This was December 28th, 2017. New Steven Avery blood spatter test prove he was framed, making a murder attorney exclusively says. The Wisconsin man whose conviction was portrayed in the popular Netflix documentary Making a Murderer was framed for the 2005 crime, his defense attorney told Newsweek, citing new experiments she conducted with a bloodstain expert. The experts are among multiple tests overseen by attorney Kathleen Zellner to demonstrate flaws in the prosecutor's original murder case against Steven Avery. In 2007, he was found guilty of killing a woman in part because his blood was found in the Toyota SUV she had driven to the Avery family's auto salvage yard. The experiments show the blood in the RAV4 was planted, said Zellner, who was not involved in Avery's original case, which was grippingly portrayed in the Netflix series. We're not saying the cops planted it. We're saying the killer planted the blood. Zellner and bloodstain pattern analyst Stuart James recreated as much of the actual scene as possible, with the lawyer and expert using real blood from a volunteer, the actual sink from Avery's trailer, and a RAV4 of the same make and model as the victims. Prosecutors said Avery fatally shot Teresa Halbach, burned her body, and then drove her RAV4 to a corner of the yard, leaving his blood in multiple places inside the vehicle. But the new experiments undermine those claims, Zellner said. For one thing, flakes of blood were found on top of the driver's side carpet floor. But in their experiment, Zellner and James hypothesized it could not have been Avery's because fresh blood would have soaked into the carpet instead of sitting as flakes on top of the fibers. Quick point. On Twitter, there were people theorizing that the flakes were from the blood vial because of how old the blood was. So if they used the blood from the vial, it could be flaked. To prove this, they transferred 2 samples of blood from Avery's sink to the RAV4. First, a sample of blood that had been allowed to dry on the rim of Avery's sink, and then a sample of fresh blood from the sink. The liquid blood soaked into the car's carpet. The dried blood remained on top of it, casting doubt on the prosecutor's claim that Avery bled directly from a cut finger into the car. The bloodstains belonging to Mr. Avery are consistent with an explanation other than Mr. Avery being in the RAV4 and depositing his blood in those locations with his actively bleeding cut finger, James wrote in an affidavit filed with the court. Zellner was more succinct. The killer took the blood out of the sink, she told Newsweek. In a court filing last month, Zellner identified 2 alternative suspects, Avery's nephew, Bobby Dassey, and his brother-in-law, Scott Tadich, both of whom, is it Tadich or Tadich? Tadic?
Yeah.
Tadich.
Tadachi.
Tadich. Both of whom had access to Avery's trailer and Halbach's RAV4. Time is not an issue. James' affidavit says he was able to deposit the blood samples in the RAV4 in less than 3 minutes. giving a killer plenty of time to frame a man for murder. The video of the experiments also shows James applying fresh blood to the RAV4 near the vehicle's ignition to show those bloodstains were most likely purposely left by a Q-tip or some similar method, and not accidentally by Avery. To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Mr. Avery would not have deposited blood at the location with his right middle finger while turning the key in the ignition, James wrote in his affidavit. James also wrote that if Avery had actually driven the RAV4 while he was actively bleeding, he would have left blood and bloody fingerprints in more places inside and outside the vehicle. The last experiment shown in the video above was conducted to cast doubt on the amount of blood prosecutors said was spilled inside the RAV4. Zellner has had past success with experiments intended to prove the innocence of her clients. She once dropped a dead lamb into a creek as part of a successful attempt to free a father who had been arrested for the murder of his daughter.
Lamb?
Yeah, she conducted a similar experiment in the Avery Appeal with a bookshelf and the key to a RAV4, which Newsweek reported on earlier this month. In October, a county judge turned down Avery's motion for a new trial, but his appeal will now be considered by a Wisconsin appeals court. Online court records state. A spokesman for the Wisconsin Department of Justice, which is arguing against Avery's appeal, did not respond to a request for comment Thursday. Avery, who is now 55 years old, is currently serving a sentence of life in prison without parole at Waupun Correctional Institute in Wisconsin. Waupun. So that is a good point, right? Because if he was bleeding profusely from his finger, wouldn't there be a lot more blood?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing adds up in this case. Also, there's no actual confirmation by any kind of objective neutral source that that's even Avery's blood. So is it even conclusively proven to be his blood? Once again, we look at all the DNA testing between false positives, thresholds, age of blood, crime lab corruption. There's a lot of issues here. So some theories are that blood was planted in the RAV4, but it wasn't even Steven Avery's blood. So it was somebody else's blood, and they just said it was Avery's.
That's so simple then.
Well, what are we taking on blind faith and what are we not in this case? So here's the other thing. If they took blood from the bathroom and they just switched the label from which blood was found in the RAV4, you don't need to plant anything, right? If you just switch a label.
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell?
I agree.
So here's the other thing. They took cuttings and swabs from Avery's Grand Am. So if they just switch the labels on those between the Grand Am, his Grand Am, and the RAV4, there you go. Now you have a match. The DNA result was good, and it's a match for Steven Avery. So here's an interesting note. Dr. Reich is a post-conviction counsel expert. He stated the most common way for forensic evidence to be planted is by relabeling the forensic swabs. Now, he makes a good point, too. That's a lot less troublesome, right? Because then instead of being at the scene, now, again, at a real scene with no conflict of interest officers who are not being sued by 36 mil, with people that are above board and legitimate, obviously it's a lot harder to be going around planting evidence. At the Avery salvage yard and his house, that's a different situation. Anybody can do anything. It's the same people finding everything. But that aside, it would be simpler to just switch labels, would it not? Because then you only have one person in on it. No conspiracy.
Yeah, it's more efficient.
So Avery's blood is allegedly found in 6 places in the RAV4. The front driver's side portion, floor by the console, right of the ignition area, front passenger seat, CD case on the front passenger seat. Was he listening to CDs and switching them out with his bloody finger? Well, and a metal panel between the back seat and cargo area. Nick Stalkey, a blood pattern expert from the crime lab, testified that the blood pattern was consistent with transfer stains and passive drops, which are indicative of active bleeding. However, the same exact stains and passive drops were in the Grand Am. So if Steven Avery was moving his own Grand Am with his cut finger or operating his own vehicle, as people have been known to do, kind of like Steven Avery was wearing his own jacket, but that wasn't the jacket that was identified in the 85 case. Remember the leather jacket fiasco? Maxwell, I'm sure Maxwell remembers it.
Yeah, I actually do.
Really?
Yeah.
Maxwell remembers something. Whoa. Whoa.
For the CD player thing, like, was there a specific location of the DNA? Like, what?
I just said CD case
CD case.
on the front passenger seat.
There's
Okay.
a picture of it if you look it up.
I'm sure Maxwell's done all the research. What
so,
are you talking
so
about?
a CD case was in the way, supposedly, or something. They had to move it.
It was on the passenger seat.
So here's a report of laboratory findings. This was dated November 9th, 2005. On Sunday, November 6, 2005, at approximately 7:30 p.m., Tom Fassbender of the Wisconsin Division of Criminal Investigation requested technical assistance with the processing of a vehicle. Laboratory Director Michael A. Haas and forensic scientists Larry Ventura and Eric Sonderland departed from the Wausau Laboratory at approximately 8:50 a.m. on Monday, November 7, 2005, and proceeded to the Marinette County Sheriff's Office impound garage. Upon arrival, at approximately 11:05 a.m., they were met and briefed by Kim Skorlinski of the Wisconsin Division of Criminal Investigation. The vehicle, a red international truck, model 4300 with flatbed, was photographed and examined. No items were collected. On Monday, November 7th, 2005, at approximately 3:10 p.m., the field response team departed from the impound garage and returned to the Wausau Laboratory. Photographs which were taken of the above described the vehicle will be forwarded to your office under separate cover. The following vehicles were received and examined in the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory. A 1999 blue Toyota RAV4, no license plates. B, a 1993 blue Pontiac Grand Am. Probable bloodstains were discovered in both vehicles. These bloodstains were examined for purposes of bloodstain pattern interpretation. Representative samples of the bloodstain patterns were recovered by forensic scientist Sherry Cohane for further testing. Observations. Visible bloodstains were present in multiple areas inside Item A, the Toyota RAV4. Contact transfer stains were present on the driver's seat cushion, the passenger seat cushion, and on the dashboard near the ignition switch. These stains are the result of a bloody source coming into direct contact with those surfaces. Additional contact transfer stains were present on the passenger side rear seat and on the floor below both ends of the rear seat. A bloodstain displaying the characteristics of a passive drop measuring 9 millimeters wide was present on the passenger side rear door threshold. A bloodstain with these characteristics is created or formed by the force of gravity acting alone on a blood source, often indicating active bleeding. The rear storage compartment of the RAV4 exhibited multiple bloodstain patterns. Impact stains with corresponding flow patterns measuring 2 millimeters to 6 millimeters in size were present on the interior panel of the rear door. These impact stains were deposited in a pattern that suggests this blood was released or thrown from a blood-bearing object in motion. A combination of contact transfer stains, impact stains, and flow patterns were present on the threshold of the rear door. A bloody swipe pattern, the transfer of blood from a moving source onto an unstained surface, was also present on the metal trim of the rear door's threshold. The carpeted floor of the rear storage area also exhibited contact transfer stains similar to swipe patterns. Contact transfer stains, some with patterns consistent with the transfer of blood from bloody hair, were present along the inside wall of the storage compartment, immediately behind the right rear passenger seat. Visible bloodstains were present in Item B, the Pontiac Grand Am. Contact transfer stains were present on the gear shift, the top and passenger side of the center console, and on the front edge of the rear seat. 2 drops measuring 3 millimeters and 6 millimeters in size were on top of the center console below the gear shift. Conclusions. The contact transfer stains and the drops found in the area of the driver's seats of items A and B and the RAV4 and the Grand Am respectively are consistent with the operation of both vehicles by an individual who was actively bleeding. The contact transfer stains observed underneath both ends of the rear seat and located just below the seat levers of the RAV4 are consistent with a transfer of blood while an individual was lifting the split rear seats. The passive drop located on the threshold of the passenger side door suggests that this individual was actively bleeding. The distribution and orientation of the stain patterns observed in the rear storage area of the RAV4 are consistent with the presence of an individual with bloody head hair in the rear of this vehicle. So, two separate things. So what if Teresa Halbach was in the back of the RAV4, although, once again, we have the liner of the floor, which if she was bleeding profusely, if they took out the whole liner, there might not be a lot left. I don't know. I would still think there would be quite a bit of blood. But if they just simply switched the Grand Am swabs and said that they were from the RAV4, boom, done. It's his DNA. Nothing more to see here.
And the car does look different, like based off the pictures on what they had while it was at the Avery yard versus what was at
we're
the
going to get
crime
into
lab.
that in a dedicated episode. We're just going to go with blood evidence for now.
Yeah, it seemed like there was blood on the car after it was at the when there's
So
evidence.
here
on it.
was Ken Kratz's argument. Do you know who Ken Kratz is, Maxwell?
Some dude follow the car.
Special prosecutor. So he alleged he was pushing that blood from Steven Avery's bathroom could not have been planted in Avery's vehicle because this blood was collected by Detective Remacher and Sergeant Tyson on November 5th, 2005 between 10 and 11 p.m. and the RAV4 was already enclosed and locked in a trailer on its way to the state crime lab. Once again, Ken Kratz is asking you to take on blind faith that these samples were collected at the time they said they were collected. Is anybody even watching the log, like when they sign in? And does anybody corroborate what they signed in as? Which we'll be getting into strange cases on who signed in when of some major players in this case. So here's another thing that's weird. They waited over 8 hours to tow a locked vehicle involved in a missing persons case. So Ertl, you know who Ertl is, Maxwell?
No,
John
who's that?
Ertl. So this is Wisconsin State Crime Lab analyst, John Ertl. We went over him before, Maxwell. Ertl explained he got a call at noon and told law enforcement to put a tarp over the vehicle as rain was coming. So Ertl was the one that told them to put the tarp over the vehicle. Ertl did not arrive there until 4 p.m. He said they had removed the tarp just as we arrived. So by the time he got to the RAV4, he said all doors were locked, and he's shown a flashlight inside at 4:30 p.m. So we're looking at 6 hours of difference between the time that the vehicle was discovered at 10:30 a.m. and when Ertl arrived. What happened in this time frame, we don't know. What happened, whether the vehicle was even there or not in the days before, we don't know. Ertl said he administered the loading of the RAV4 by a wrecker into a covered trailer for transport to the state crime lab in Madison. Fassbender testified that they started loading the RAV4 on the trailer at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, November 5th. So this is from the transcript. What was done with the vehicle, if you know, and were you involved in that? Yes, I was involved in that to a degree, probably about 7:30ish that evening with the rain coming down. I was asked to take the wrecker service, Rabas Wrecker Service, down to the area by the car crusher. Another, I guess, wrecker service was also there, Pethin out of Calumet County. They had an enclosed trailer that could carry vehicles. They were also there, came down to that location. At that point, the crime lab personnel that were there accompanied the wrecker operator over to the RAV4 location where they hooked up the RAV4 and towed it back to the location by the car crusher where the enclosed trailer was waiting. And they backed it into the enclosed trailer and secured it in the enclosed trailer. How was it loaded on the vehicle? Was it started up or something? No, the wrecker operator backed it into that trailer. There was a ramp set up, and the wrecker operator backed it right up into that trailer, and then it was secured. So they did turn it on to back it up? He's saying no.
Yeah, the car needs to be put in neutral, right?
Oh, if they just rolled it?
Yeah, well, it would pull it, right?
By what? It was in the back of a trailer. Did they have a...
Well, what's a
Tillage?
wrecker? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I guess they could have done that, yeah. Fassbender also testified that people were signing off from the scene... around 10 p.m. on Saturday, November 5th. All right, would you make note of the last page, which is toward the end of the day when people signing off? You said around 10 p.m. people were knocking off on, this is the first Friday, November 5th. I'm sorry, Saturday, November 5th? Yes. Most of the investigation detectives were leaving around 10-ish, something like that. 10, 11, sure. Ertl said he left the property at 8:45 p.m. This is the driver hauling the RAV4 on an enclosed trailer also left at this time. So did District Attorney Ken Kratz. Ertl said that the RAV4 on the enclosed trailer arrived in Madison at 1:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. Ertl said he called a local record to remove the RAV4 from the trailer. Ertl said he finished securing the RAV4 in the crime lab at about 2 a.m. So here's the question. Where was Kratz all this time? Is Kratz giving him any kind of directions, or is he giving any of the other crime lab technicians directions? If there was anybody else even there.
How far is Madison?
So let's go through that right now. So the RAV4 on an enclosed trailer went from the Avery salvage yard to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab in Madison, 160 miles. So it left at 8:45 p.m. and didn't arrive until 1:15 a.m. So why does it take 4 hours when the most it could take would be 2 hours and 45 minutes? So we're looking at over an hour of missing time, between 1 and 1.5 hours of missing time. Was it abducted by aliens, Maxwell? And then they put it back, and then that's what the missing time was? Missing time is usually associated with alien abductions.
Anything's possible.
Is that Maxwell's new theory? Aliens were involved in the Steven Avery case.
I like that theory.
So if it was stopped somewhere along the way, could it be possible that the blood was planted during that stop? Or was the blood planted after it was secured at 2 a.m. on Sunday, November 6th, before photographer Graffi began taking pictures? So Ken Kratz left the auto salvage yard at the exact same time as Nick Mersberger, the man driving the RAV4 to the crime lab on the enclosed trailer. So everyone said that the doors were locked when it was found at 10:30 a.m. However, when the photographer arrived on November 6th, he said the driver's door was unlocked. So we have many hours between when the car was first found and then when they arrived to tow it. Then we have another missing hour to 1.5 hours, a missing hour to an hour and a half between when it should have arrived at the state lab. I mean, I guess the driver, could the driver and Ken Kratz have just stopped to eat somewhere along the way and discuss the planning process? Or
Yeah,
it could have just been a long snack break, and then they went to the lab and planted it there, or they actually had the opportunity to plant it at the yard when it was just sitting there for hours and hours and hours, and then also had the tarp over it for X amount of time. What was going on under that tarp, Maxwell? What was going on?
Magic.
The magic show of the Steven Avery case. So, Corporal Chris Wendorf of CASO reported that he was given a key to the RAV4 on November 11th, and the key was made in order to enter the RAV4, as the original key had not been located at the time they had received the vehicle. On page 230, also given to me by Meyer was a key the Wisconsin State Crime Lab had made in order to enter the RAV4.
Wait, but they could break into it, right?
Yeah, they could, I guess. But that's not what they're saying. They're saying they needed the
made
key they're saying they needed the key to enter. This is what they're saying. I don't know why.
They had it made on the 11th.
Well, maybe they didn't want to jimmy it because they thought it would disrupt the evidence. I don't know. Also given to me by Meyer was a key the Wisconsin State Crime Lab had made in order to enter the RAV4, as the original key had not been located at the time they had received the vehicle. So the key that Lank and Colburn found in Avery's bedroom, oh, how did that get there? On November 8th was the valet key to Teresa's RAV4, so that was the 8th. Teresa's keychain with her master car keys, house key, and studio key has never been found. So once again, this vehicle is arriving at the state lab on the 6th. So from Saturday night it was towed, arrived early morning after 1 a.m. on Sunday the 6th, and the valet key was found on the 8th.
And when did they take all those photos of like the soda can and all that?
We don't really know. It could have been
After they
the
had the
GOF
key made?
on the 6th or after. Since we don't have the metadata, it's all speculation. It looks like some of them were before, some of them were after. That's what it looks like. So you could also go through the actual Toyota RAV4 manual, and you can see that the valet key is different than the master key. So this was definitely the spare key.
Okay.
And then, of course, We've mentioned this a bunch of times. Avery's bedroom was searched multiple times before they found the RAV4 key. Zellner did an experiment with the RAV4 key, so she said it couldn't have magically went diagonally to land on the slippers, as they had claimed. So Lank says he found the key, but it was actually logged and processed by Kucharski from Calumet County, and it has a Calumet County log number. Another issue so this is item number 7620 for case report 05179. It's not listed on the Calumet County Sheriff log. So was it at the crime lab? So that's kind of weird. So Kratz and Ertl left Avery salvage yard at the same time as the driver who towed the RAV4 to the crime lab. So were they all at the crime lab together 1:15 a.m. on November 6th when no one else is around and they planted it? So he got the call about the RAV4 being found at 4 p.m. on November 5th. Well, he got the call at noon and arrived at 4 p.m. on the 5th. So he explicitly stated when he looked inside with his flashlight, there was no blood visible inside the vehicle at Avery Salvage Yard. Okay, once again, one of the key pieces of evidence the guilters point to. His blood was in the vehicle, therefore he killed Teresa Halbach. So a couple problems with this. Are we taking on blind faith and assuming the vehicle is her vehicle? Which, let's say it is. Was it there the whole time? Did someone else plant the vehicle? If they planted the vehicle, the blood could have been planted there at any time. Now let's say that is Avery's blood on the vehicle. If it wasn't there when the vehicle was at the yard and was put there in the crime lab, how does it prove that Steven Avery killed Teresa Halbach? Answer the question, Maxwell. Answer the question. If there was none of Avery's blood in the RAV4, like, are we taking, a lot of people are take as a given that his blood was in the RAV4 when it was discovered. Is that really a given? Do we have any proof of that? Maxwell?
I don't know.
No, so there might be proof of that?
Did they find blood on the spare wheel on the back? Do you know about that? Because I was gonna say.
Oh, we didn't get to that yet.
Oh, or sorry, not the spare wheel. The opener handle on the back to open up the trunk.
I believe they said. Did they? They said it was in 6 spots. The cargo hold. So I believe that would that be called the cargo hold? So if so, yes, because I think they said they did find it on the cargo hold. But what does that have to do with anything?
I mean, there's a picture before it entered the crime lab.
Uh-huh.
There's no blood, or what looks like to be blood, and then when it's there, it looks like there's blood on it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. So Ertl actually testified there was no blood visible inside the vehicle. So do we have any proof that Steven Avery's blood was in the vehicle when it was discovered at the salvage yard? Maxwell, yes, no, maybe. What do you got?
I don't know what to think.
Is there any proof that there was blood there? Have you heard any proof this entire podcast?
No.
So Ronald Graffy photographed the car on Sunday, November 6th. So at the trial, there is no time given for when he took the photographs. Is that suspicious? Do you find that suspicious?
Very suspicious.
So the first person to take pictures at the crime lab, we do not have a time for when he took these pictures, and the metadata has not been released. Johnny, what do you think about this? Is this weird or what?
Pretty weird.
Day 10, page 64, Gaffey explicitly states the driver's door was unlocked when he got there and all other doors were locked. So Nicole Sturm and John Ertl both said all doors were locked at the Avery salvage yard. What do we think of this, Maxwell? None of this stuff adds up. This is weird stuff. So, there is no evidence, there are no statements, there is no testimony that any blood was visible inside the RAV4 at 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, November 5th. However, the blood is clearly there in photographs taken at an unspecified time on Sunday, November 6th by Graffy.
So did they have photos where it shows no blood and then a photo that shows blood?
That's what Johnny's saying.
If that's where the blood actually was, if they said it was blood.
Well, I haven't seen anything that shows any blood.
Like, so this photo here, this was at, the yard. And you see the wheel here?
Yeah.
How it looks?
Yeah.
Uh,
There's blood on there or what?
there's nothing there, but this is in the lab. Isn't it different? Like there's tears or rips.
Oh, that's weird.
So this is at the lab. You see these like weird tears right here? And then that little mark.
Okay.
All right, now look at the yard. There's like no tear or rips. And then, I mean, it's hard to see, but can't really tell.
Yeah, well, could
That's
some of
interesting.
those tears could have just been from moving it, right? Like if they were hooking it up to the back or whatever,
Or the small
or
branches.
putting, putting the tarp on it off, right? Because they'd be constantly contacting it.
But then that's
Yeah.
that's a big damage though. It looks like that you can't do that much damage to that vinyl or leather.
Well, I mean, we don't even really know for certain whether or not the RAV4s could have been swapped,
Yeah.
which we will get into in our evidence podcast. But
And in this photo, if you brighten it up a bunch, there's something written on the glass. And then in the crime lab, there's nothing written on it.
what the heck?
Let me see.
It's weird here. You can see like it says 400 backwards. Like it was written on the image.
Let me see.
I never saw that before. Yeah, people are doing their homework online, brightening the image to extremely. There does look like there's something written.
I
on it.
did that. I did that.
Oh.
I never see anybody because I was looking at this photo. You can notice
Wait, you
something.
did? Oh,
on
you
there.
really did that?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were just saying that.
no, look.
Johnny Mills.
You can notice there's
Investigation.
something there. So if you brighten it up or bring up the exposure, yeah, you can kind of see something. And
Our
there's
image specialist, Johnny Mills, has discovered that there's something written on the back window of the RAV4.
like right there. So it's behind the branch, right?
Let me see again.
You see, it's
Is that
definitely
like a
on the glass.
handwritten thing on the window, dirt thing. Or
What the heck is that?
I can't It's hard to see
can't
what it
tell.
says, but it definitely looks like letters. Like I
You
don't
know,
know.
you know, it'd be real
What does it say?
scary
Help-
if she
help
was
me?
if she was writing something from the
Oh, shoot.
inside
That's
while she was
crazy.
being held in the back.
It
Oh,
looks
wow.
like,
And then
it looked
they-
like help me. Is that?
Because look here, this is
Yeah,
in the
there's
crime
nothing
lab. There's
there.
nothing there. It's
Nothing
clean.
there. Yep,
It looks,
yep, completely clean.
except like this mark here and this little handle there's like possibly blood. I don't know if they said there was
That's
blood
creepy
there.
as hell.
That's real creepy if she wrote something on the back while she was being held in the RAV4, but that contradicts the state theory that she was already dead, right? When she
See,
put it there.
What I don't get though is like why that's there. But it's weird too because like that's behind the branch. We're kind of
Yeah, I
like going NASA style here, like on the moon photos.
Yeah, I can't tell.
It looks like 400
But hold on,
backwards.
like going back to again
and
this.
three.
Yeah, it looks weird.
Because it's a scanned photo, you know what I mean?
yeah,
To
yeah,
get it digital. But that's clearly on the glass. It has to be because it's behind the branch.
yeah, yep. We don't know what it is, or if it was not her vehicle, and if
Yeah.
it's some other vehicle. Did they just buy a vehicle that was also a RAV4? Wait, does that have the price on it? Could that be what that would be?
That's interesting. I don't know.
Because they write the
it looks
prices.
like letters though.
Yeah. Well,
It doesn't look like
sale?
numbers. You have to. I have it on my computer. It looks a lot better than on my phone. Easier to see.
But it kind of like supposedly she's dead. I still don't really get what the state's theory is. Why would he even put her in the RAV4 if he killed her and burned her? Like, why did he put her for no reason in the RAV4? Drive around the RAV4, maybe burn her in the quarry site. Drive her to the quarry, burn her a little bit there, then bring it back to his house, burn her there, then spread some remains in Janda's barrel. Like, I don't understand that theory. I just don't get it.
Yeah,
How could that even work? But that is really, really creepy with the writing on the back. So if it's her writing help or something, what if she was supposedly if she left his property and she's being driven in the back and she was like semi-unconscious, she's writing that as they're driving her
Somebody
Oh
can see
somewhere.
my god.
Someone's driving her somewhere. Yeah. And then when they take it, then they realize it's there. But wouldn't they wipe that clean before planting it at the? Or if it was night, if they drove it there at night and they didn't see, and they just left it there at whatever night they did.
Yeah, that's
that.
like the only photo you could actually see that writing on there. The one thing that I noticed also looking at the photos was the rotors. They're like really rusted.
We're gonna get into again. We have to have a specific podcast addressing the issues with the RAV4. We're gonna talk mostly about blood.
So you saw photos that with the rotors really rusted, and then the other photo.
There's
not
different
rusted?
photos with various stages that have led some people to believe that that's not her RAV4 that was recovered.
That's
at the
very
salvage yard.
interesting.
Yeah.
My idea was just that it was sitting a lot.
But hold
longer
on,
than people thought.
one more, which is also also a possibility. But the other thing is, if they bought a RAV4 of the same exact make and model, or possibly a slightly different color, which some people are alleging, And that's the for sale writing on the back that maybe they tried to wipe down and a little tiny bit is left and they didn't wipe it all the way down until it got to the
that's
crime
a good
lab.
one. I like that one.
That's funny. Wow. It's so hard to find these photos. Should just have like a nice
Or maybe that's
collection
what
of
they
all this
spent. Or
stuff.
maybe they were wiping it down. They were all going through the process of wiping it down during those couple hours before it even got towed because they didn't want anybody to see it as it was being loaded. Because there's no way everybody on the property was in on it. If some of the other people who saw it,
Yeah.
maybe that's why they covered it with the tarp.
It's
like we got to make some adjustments here. Well, we need the timestamp. We need timestamps on all these photos. Metadata is important, people. Because how are you going to prove anything without the metadata? So the Pontiac Grand Am was also towed. So 10:45, Lieutenant John Burns of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department and Corporal Chris Wendorf left with Scott's Towing flatbed operated by Brian Rowring and Dan's Towing flatbed operated by Dan Bangert. So that was with the Pontiac Grand Am as well. And this evidence was collected from Lucy A. Meyer, Wisconsin State Crime Lab technician. The two vehicles were loaded on the flatbed tow trucks. The RAV4 was loaded on Scott's Towing flatbed along with the hood of the Rambler, strapped to the flatbed underneath the Toyota RAV4. The Pontiac Grand Am was loaded onto the Dan's Towing flatbed unit. Also given to me by Meyer was a key by the Wisconsin State Crime Lab made in order to enter the RAV4 vehicle, as the original key had not been located at the time. Well, this is kind of weird.
What?
So they gave this guy the key? The crime lab made the key. When did they give him the key? Oh, here we go. Here we go. So check out on this report from Corporal Wendorf. Date of activity 11/11/05. So are you guys ready for this? You ready to get mind shocked? Also, while at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab, I had delivered an envelope addressed to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab that had been given to me by Deputy Hawkins that did contain evidence with a buccal swab from Steven Avery. So they're handing off envelopes at the same time they're dropping off these vehicles? What the heck is going on here, Maxwell? What is going on? And palm and print cards from Charles Avery, Earl Avery, and Bobby Dassey. This evidence package was turned over to Sue E. Gitchell of the Wisconsin State Crime Lab and taken by her 1:23 p.m. Gitchell did give me a receipt of physical evidence form which will be submitted to Deputy Hawkins, the evidence custodian. At 1:30, we did depart from the Wisconsin State Crime Lab in Madison, en route to the Chilton storage units. During the return trip, I did have constant visual of the Toyota RAV4, and there was no entry made to the vehicle by anyone. The vehicle did not come off the tow unit until 3:40 p.m. when we arrived at the Chilton storage units where the vehicles were stored. So he's saying no one touched the vehicles after they left the crime lab. The Toyota RAV4 was stored in Unit 7 of the storage units off of Mary Avenue in the city of Chilton. I did personally view the offloading of the vehicle and did utilize the key that had been made to... Oh, the key was made way after they already tested all of this.
So they got access to the car before they made the key?
Well, this is the 11th, so they did get the key. Was it the 8th or whatever it was?
Okay.
Yeah, because they arrived there on the 6th. You following, Maxwell? And did utilize the key that had been made to turn the wheels so that it can be placed inside the storage unit. I then did tape the vehicle doors with evidence tape and initial date and time stamp such as evidence tape. The unit was then closed and locked with a fresh, brand new master lock key lock that had been removed from its packaging. Lieutenant Burns did remain with the Pontiac Grand Am, and he did evidence tape seal the doors to that vehicle and initial that evidence tape as well. See supplemental report from Lieutenant Burns. At this point, I did also close the garage door to the storage unit 1 of the same complex and opened a fresh master lock key lock from the packaging and used that to secure the garage door. Evidence tags were filled out and placed under the windshield wipers of the vehicles secured in the storage units. The vehicles were stored in the storage units off of Mary Avenue, and a key copy that was made for the Toyota RAV4 was brought back to the Sheriff's Department along with keys for the master locks used to secure the garage doors. The following sets of keys were bagged, sealed, and labeled for evidence and submitted to the evidence storage area in the evidence room at Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Bag number 1 with property tag number 8037 is a key copy for the Toyota RAV4 that was made by the Wisconsin State Lab, collected at 1 p.m., same time the vehicles were collected. Bag number 2 with property tag number 8038 contains 2 master lock keys for storage unit number 7. This storage unit contains the RAV4 and hood for the Rambler. Bag number 3 with property tag 8039 contains 2 master lock keys for storage unit 1, which contains the Pontiac Grand Am. Evidence bags and property tags along with the evidence were deposited in locker number 1 of the storage area to await the property custodian for proper logging. This was done at approximately 7:30 p.m. after Sergeant Tyson did return and open the evidence area. Some people actually believe keys were switched with the RAV4 at certain times. So the key they found could have actually possibly been the real key or not, or to a completely different RAV4. Like we pointed out in the previous podcast, did they actually test the key that they found in Avery's bedroom to that specific RAV4? That was Teresa Halbach. If that was her RAV4 and not a different RAV4 to which the key might have matched. But is that Teresa's RAV4? What are you thinking, Maxwell?
A little overwhelmed.
You're not following?
A little bit.
Look at that RAV4. That's hers, but then look at that one.
Completely different color.
Yeah, they got to fix their white balance. When they do
We need the metadata because if they're taken within, like, we have to see what, because if they were taken within a short amount of time, that probably is the same RAV4.
I actually saw a clock on it when he was looking at the...
Yeah, right here.
Oh, you see a clock in the background?
Yeah, there's a clock.
What do we got?
You can't know for sure. That's why military time is awesome. It could either be 11:05 p.m. or a.m.
I finally found some purpose with the military.
So the first person to be asked if they saw blood in the vehicle was Pam Sturm, page 238, during cross-examination. She says she did not see blood inside the car without hesitating. So she's the first one to see the car. She looked all over the car, and she said there was no blood inside it. The second person, her daughter, Nicole Sturm, pages 16 to 17, during cross-examination. Ken Kratz objects when she dodges the question. She did not give a yes or no answer. She says she did not see blood in the vehicle. This is the second person to see the car. No blood. The third person asked is Sergeant Jason Orth, pages 156 to 160, during cross-examination. He also dodges the question. He said he was 30 feet from the vehicle and couldn't see inside. And this is right after he said that he could see Teresa Halbach's name on the digital camera card. And then they asked him, did you see any blood in the vehicle? Then he says, I'm 30 feet away. Maxwell, any thoughts on this Jason Orth guy?
Got his binoculars on.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Is that the SD card?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So he said he could see her name on it, but he couldn't tell if there was blood or not in the vehicle.
Oh, my God. He saw the SD card, but he didn't see the blood right there.
Not only that, but he saw the writing of her name, or Teresa, the first part of her first name.
Wow.
And Budin keeps asking him, and then he says he did not see blood looking inside the passenger window or the rear window. So now this is 3 people that said they did not see blood. John Ertl is the fourth, page 20, and he also said there was no blood. All right, so there was no blood visible. So did they plant all the blood before Goffey took the photos?
My bad. I was trying to check the MINDSHOCK thing. Whatever. I want to hear the sound to that.
Oh, man.
We should do a podcast on reviewing memes.
That was a meme.
I don't know. Probably
So
not.
did they set it all up before Goffey took the pictures? That's why all the blood is there. Because we don't even have a time on when he took the pictures. Oh, man, this is terrible. Okay, so on May 17th, 2016, Zellner tweeted, Steven Avery evidence planted. Trailer, garage, fire pit, burn barrel, and car. Brendan Dassey evidence planted in his mind. Both badly done. And then she also tweeted December 4th, 2016, experts' experiments confirms Steven Avery's trial attorneys correct about blood being planted, but incorrect about how it was done. So some people actually theorize that Calumet and Manitowoc were acting separately. So only one county was directly complicit, the other didn't know about it, and they were fed other information by, let's say, Ken Kratz. So they not necessarily knowingly were involved in the conspiracy. It does get weird once you bring the state into it, but... All right, let's look at the possibilities of planting blood other than the vial of Avery's blood. That it's supposed to have the needle hole, so that's no problem, but the seal was broken. So, and when that was done, we don't know.
Is the needle hole there supposed to be there in case you want to plant some evidence? Just easier to get the needle in?
I think the needle hole, well, I don't know, but that's supposedly standard procedure. However, the seal being broken, the box being tampered with, and strange things in the log, that's a completely separate issue. So Zellner filed in a motion June 7th, 2017, that the blood planted in Halbach's RAV4 came from Steven Avery's bathroom sink. On the evening of November 3rd, after he reopened a cut to his right middle finger and dripped blood into the sink, neglecting to clean it up because his brother Chuck was waiting for him so that they could drive to Menards. And when he came home that night, he went straight to bed, not noticing until the next morning that most of the blood in the sink was gone.
Yeah, it's so crazy because, like, somebody would have to know that his cut was open again.
Yeah.
To know that there would be blood in his sink to, like, capture and then use against him. Like, how would that actually work?
He stated November 9th, he had two interviews, November 9th, November 18th. He stated that he believes law enforcement removed his blood from his trailer, and in one interview states he believes law enforcement removed his blood from his sink. There was also failure of trial defense counsel to investigate Mr. Avery's claim that his blood was removed from his bathroom sink and planted in the RAV4. On the evening of November 3rd, 2005, Mr. Avery was having dinner at his mother's residence, and when he walked outside her residence, a uniformed officer pulled up in a MCSD squad car and asked him if he could speak with him. Later, Mr. Avery learned that this individual's name was Sergeant Coburn. Coburn sound familiar, Maxwell?
Very familiar.
Sergeant Colburn asked Mr. Avery if a female from Auto Trader magazine had come to the property on Monday to take pictures of a vehicle they were selling. Mr. Avery told Sergeant Colburn that a female from Auto Trader had come to the property at approximately 2:30 p.m. and had photographed a van his sister was selling. Mr. Avery contended that she was on the property for less than 5 minutes. Mr. Avery told Sergeant Colburn that he noticed her photographing the van and he exited his trailer to pay her. Mr. Avery observed Ms. Halbach leave the property and turn left on Highway 147. Sergeant Coburn misrepresented in a report written months later that Mr. Avery said 3 p.m. and not 2:30 p.m. Mr. Avery's affidavit is consistent with all of his prior statements to police that Ms. Halbach was on the Avery property sometime between 2 and 2:30 p.m. Mr. Avery then drove his Pontiac Grand Am from his parents' residence to his usual parking spot in front of his garage. Mr. Avery then walked next door to his sister's trailer where he attempted to unhitch the trailer. In doing so, Mr. Avery broke open the cut on his middle finger of his right hand. His finger was dripping blood as he walked back to his car to retrieve his cell phone charger. While in his car, Mr. Avery dripped blood from his finger onto the seats and the gear shift. From his car, Mr. Avery walked to his trailer, entering through the door at the south end. Mr. Avery dripped blood on the floor as he entered the bathroom to find a piece of tape to put on the cut. Mr. Avery dripped blood onto the rim and basin of the sink and the bathroom floor. He did not wash away or wipe up the floor or sink because his brother Charles Avery was waiting for him to go to Menards in Manitowoc with him. He hastily wrapped his finger in masking tape and exited the trailer through the front door. Mr. Avery forgot to lock the south door on the front of the trailer. He did not clean the blood out of his sink prior to leaving the trailer at approximately 7:30 p.m. to go to Menards with his brother Chuck. Mr. Avery and Chuck checked out at Menards at 8:06 p.m., and this is on surveillance video. Bloodstains were noted on the molding and inside living room door of Mr. Avery's trailer. Mr. Avery's Pontiac was unlocked, and visible blood was on the gear shift. Anyone who examined the interior of his trailer or vehicle would have recognized that the locations of the various bloodstains indicated Mr. Avery had a cut on his hand. So anybody that was walking around there would have seen the blood in his Grand Am. So you didn't even have to go inside the trailer. You could just get it from there.
Whoever was there would know that his finger was cut on that day, right?
Well, it's also on the surveillance tape, so yeah.
Because if he supposedly killed her on the 31st, that means like his blood should be in her car.
Yeah.
Before the cut. Right? So where did his blood come
right.
from?
Yeah.
So like the blood only
He
showed
left
up.
at 7:30 p.m. Yeah, that is interesting.
Because he didn't have any other visual cuts or anything.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Unless he did get cut that day and it happened that night. But like, why
Mr.
would
Johnson, a family friend of the Averys and owner of Mr. Avery's trailer, remembers observing the cut on Mr. Avery's finger at least 1 week prior to October 31st, 2005. At approximately 7:30 p.m., Mr. Avery was exiting the Avery property onto Highway 147 when he observed the taillights of a vehicle close to the front of his trailer. Mr. Avery contends that the only way the vehicle could enter his property from the direction it was pointed was if it was driven by way of Cuss Road and then across the field to the front of his trailer. Mr. Avery believes the vehicle's taillights were similar to those of the RAV4 and not a squad car. Mr. Avery instructed his brother Chuck to turn around and drive back to the trailer, but by the time they drove back to Mr. Avery's trailer, the vehicle had departed into the darkness. Mr. Avery and Chuck went to Menards and the county jail to drop off money for Mr. Avery's girlfriend. Mr. Avery arrived home at approximately 10 to 10:30 p.m. Mr. Avery did not enter the bathroom and went straight to bed.
Might as well just stayed at jail that night.
On November 4th, 2005, Mr. Avery awoke at his normal time of 6 a.m. When he entered the bathroom of his trailer to take a shower, he observed that most of the blood in and around his sink had been removed.
Should have took a picture, man.
Yeah. Mr. Avery consistently expressed his belief to his attorneys and the media that the blood of
So
his...
he just left the blood on there before
Yeah,
he
because he was in
slept?
a rush. No, he left to Menards with his brother
And then he came straight home and went
and
to sleep.
When he woke up, the blood was gone.
Damn.
Most of the blood, yeah.
Sucks.
Mr. Avery consistently expressed his belief to his attorneys and the media that the blood of his found in Miss Halbach's vehicle was planted and that it came from his trailer. In one interview, he said he dripped blood from his finger into his bathroom sink. At 10:30 a.m. on November 4th, 2005, Lieutenant Link and Detective Remacher, do these people sound familiar, Maxwell?
Yeah.
Arrived at the Avery property to interview Mr. Avery. In the early evening, Mr. Avery smelled cigarette smoke when he entered his bedroom to retrieve a cable for his mother's television. Neither Mr. Avery nor his girlfriend smoked. Mr. Avery believes his trailer was entered unlawfully a second time. On November 5th, 2005, when Mr. Avery was preparing to leave for a trip to the family property in Crivets, he noticed the south front door of his trailer had been pried open. Specifically, Mr. Avery observed pry marks on the south door of his trailer. He remembered locking this door after Lank and Detective Remacher left on the morning of November 4th. As Mr. Avery's brother Chuck left for Crivets, he observed headlights in the area where Miss Halbach's vehicle was discovered by the pond. Chuck called Mr. Avery at 7:20 p.m. to check on the headlights, but by that time, Mr. Avery arrived by Chuck's trailer. The lights were gone. You ever hear about that before?
Nope.
Huh. Very, very strange, huh?
His finger cut open again because he went to his sister's trailer to unhitch it.
Yeah.
Why would he do that?
I don't know. Well, the other thing, if he killed her, the cut could have opened at any time during a struggle or whatever. Then he could have taped it, whatever. He could have bandaged it back up, and then it could have opened up again later, and that's where the blood in the sink came from. So we're not going to fall for any black and white fallacies. Both could be true.
Yeah.
If he did kill her, that could be the blood from the cut. Then he taped it up. Then he could have got cut again, and then they could have planted it if there wasn't enough there, or if they didn't have the RAV4 or whatever. There's a lot of different possible scenarios. All of this could fit.
Huh.
Okay, so what are the different places they could have got his blood from? So obviously the trailer.
His car?
He also, well, hold on, from the trailer. So Nick Stalkey described the blood on the CD box, on the CD case in Teresa's RAV4 as, quote, basically covering 50% of the surface of the CD box, end quote.
Isn't it like a little drop?
I don't know.
Hold on.
This is what he said in the testimony. Day 11, page 209.
That right there?
This is what he said.
The CD case with 50% covered in blood.
Some people think that they put a bunch of blood on the CD case and then they took the blood from the CD case to plant it everywhere else, and that's why it looks like
Actually,
that afterward.
with this photo enhancement, it does look like it has.
Yeah.
No fingerprints found ever, right?
Supposedly not, although there might have been other prints in the vehicle that were never tested for. Or if you believe they wiped down the vehicle first and then only the Avery stuff was left. We don't know what went on in that crime lab.
They cloned the car.
They're swapping vehicles too. All right, so yes, the blood from the Grand Am, that seems actually possibly to be the most likely, right? Blood from the Grand Am that Avery drove to Crivets the morning of November 5th, or a bloody rag that was found in the vehicle when it was seized on November 6th. So if he had a rag to kind of control the bleeding.
Yeah.
There was also another bloody rag that wasn't collected by Wendy Baldwin from the Grand Am. Wendy Baldwin collected a bloody rag from a silver station wagon near the pond in the salvage yard at 9:03 a.m. on November 6th when the Grand Am was in Marinette County. CASO, page 109.
He could have been drugged, and then somebody got a syringe and just draw some blood from. That could work too.
Wait, what was that?
Somebody could drug him, break in, steal blood from, have a vial.
They might not need to, because if he's got blood all over the place in the sink, whatever. Or in his vehicle, rags, bloody rags all over the place. So Avery actually told Milwaukee Magazine that he cut his finger loading tin roofing onto a flatbed, and every time the cut was reopened, he, quote, bled like a stuffed pig, end quote. And he said he reopened the cut on November 5th when helping install a tin roof in Crivets.
What about
Nobody asked him when the original cut was. Huh. But some people also point that it's kind of weird that nobody's asking about the cut on his finger. Because if there's a missing woman, like, what if there was a struggle and she cut him or something? Nobody's even asking about that. Is that because they already have their narrative all planned out and they don't want to find out what really happened because they already know? And it has nothing to do with Avery. What do you think about that, Maxwell?
Interesting.
Detectives said Roland Johnson told them on February 6, 2006, that he saw Steven Avery just prior to Halloween 2005. This is day 19, page 148. He said it wasn't unusual for Alan Avery and his sons to have cuts since they worked in a junkyard. But he noticed this particular cut to Steven's hand because it was a pretty nasty gash that he thought needed stitches. Because Roland wasn't interviewed until 3 months after Teresa went missing, his recollection was vague. He also testified that he saw Avery within a month of Halloween and that it could have been a week before Halloween, but he couldn't remember. So once again, a lot of it is reported as this was a week before Halloween that he had the cut. But it's possible he didn't get the cut until after Teresa already went missing and until after he would have already moved her car if he did kill her. Things to ponder. What do you got, Maxwell?
When did they take that picture of his finger when it was cut?
That was during the interviews, which was after.
Oh,
It looks healed
8.
up.
A little bit, yeah.
It looks like it could have used a couple of stitches.
He had the cut when the people came to interview him at his house on his finger too already.
Yeah. On November 5th, he reopened the cut, installing the roofing. They loaded the roofing Thursday, November 3rd. Or it was loaded the week before Halloween and driven to the cabin, which would have been the 28th or 29th. And if they were watching him, Lank and Remaker would have seen the cut to his finger at any time. Okay, there's another thing we didn't talk about. November 6th, so this is from day 10, page 62, Graffi testified that he took only 4 photographs. And then a decision was made between him and his supervisor, Lucy Meyer, not to process the Toyota anymore that day, and that they would instead wait until morning when the forensic DNA analyst and other types of people would be normally working. Why is that? That's weird. Graffi testified that on November 7th and 8th, he was directed to photograph the stains again. That's weird. And he took blood swabs before taking photos of the blood stains. So his job is to photograph the evidence, not be doing all this stuff. This is weird. So who told him to do this?
You should put that.
That's funny.
So we don't know because Kratz left with the truck. So So theoretically, Kratz could have went to the state lab as well, and he could have given instruction to Graffi and also Harrington. Harrington, a senior crime lab employee, was there. He was a print analyst for the state crime laboratory, and he retired from the state crime lab in 2006. He did not testify at either Stevens or Brendan's trial. The only bloodstain purported to be Avery's and noted by Graffi and Harrington was the stain near the ignition. Graffi did not testify to seeing any other stains other than Teresa's bloodstain in the cargo area. Okay, so let's look at Harrington. On November 6, 2005, a preliminary report was received from the Wisconsin State Crime Lab indicating a presumptive positive finding of human blood located within the interior of Teresa Halbach's vehicle. Stephen Harrington of the State of Wisconsin Crime Laboratory confirmed that technician had located the presumptive human blood in the rear cargo portion of the vehicle as well as the ignition area of the vehicle. Affiant was also informed by investigator Tom Fassbender that blood was found in the 97 Toyota RAV4 belonging to Teresa Halbach and located within the Avery Auto Salvage compound. Stephen Harrington of the State of Wisconsin Crime Laboratory in Madison stated that technicians had located presumptive blood in the rear cargo portion of the vehicle and also in the front of the vehicle in the ignition area. Steve Harrington further indicated that technicians also located visible palm prints on the rear hatch of the Toyota RAV4. Were these ever tested, Maxwell?
No.
Well, we don't know. So the presumptive testing for blood was done before any photographs were taken. And he also never testified. And he's the senior crime lab personnel. That's weird. They need a brain fingerprint, all of these people. All of them. And they all need new interviews. Maxwell Powers will do the interviews.
They're scared.
Who wouldn't be scared of Maxwell Powers?
They're intimidated.
Your interview could be called the Power Hour.
I like that one.
It might be more than 1 hour if you can't remember anybody's name, though.
Power hours.
Powers, hours.
Hours, hours.
Hours with powers.
Powers, 2 hours. 60 minutes. Power week.
Graffi's testimony. My activities were limited to photographing the exterior portions of the RAV4 and then the interior portions that we could get photographs of without actually having to go inside the vehicle and get those pictures before other analysts could have a chance to process the vehicle. And then a decision was made with you and your supervisor, Lucy Meyer, not to process the Toyota anymore that day and that you would instead wait until morning when the forensic DNA analyst and other types of people would be normally working. Is that right? All of the other photographs that we didn't discuss as having been taken on November 6th were those taken on November 8th. They would have been taken on November 7th and 8th. Huh.
So there's more photos. They took pictures from the outside looking in. Never saw those, though. I wonder if they had a good shot of the steering wheel key ignition. If you could see the blood there. Huh.
So here's what's weird. So Mark LeBeau, chief of the chemistry unit for the FBI laboratory, tested 3 swabs for the preservative EDTA, which was in Avery's 96 blood vial. The 3 swabs sent to LeBeau purportedly were swabbed bloodstains from near the ignition, A8, a door panel, A12, and a CD case that was inside the RAV4, A10. Swabs of the 2 bloodstains cut from the fabric in the RAV4, A6 and A9, were not sent to LeBeau. It's kind of weird where they're picking what to send, what not to send. And then if these were simply if these labels were just simply switched from the Grand Am, how would anyone know different? The FBI would not have to be complicit. Neither would anybody. Just the person that switched the labels. Max, so what do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
LeBeau said his opinion was bloodstains in the RAV4 did not come from Avery's 96 blood vial. Did you find EDTA in the tube of blood of Steven Avery? Special Prosecutor Norm Gahn asked. Yes, we did, he said. Did you find EDTA in any of the 3 bloodstained swabs from Teresa Halbach's RAV4? No, we did not. Kathleen Zellner noted in her August 2016 press conference after filing the motion for post-conviction scientific testing that, quote, there was not confirmatory DNA testing done, end quote, which could mean they never did any tests to confirm the samples were or were not Avery's blood. So did they just test for EDTA and not whether it was Avery's blood or not? where the samples switch to test from there and the blood really is from the vial, but they didn't label it as such on what they sent to the FBI. What do you got, Maxwell? No one who's guilty would ever allow this extensive testing to be done. From fibers to contaminants to DNA to blood agents, all of those things are going to be done in this. I think the thing you most want to take away with this is read the motion. No one who's guilty would ever allow this to happen because these tests are going to establish definitely the age of the blood in the victim's vehicle. So we are going to know through radiocarbon or DNA methylation whether the blood in the RV was planted from the 96 vial. In addition to that, there were many, many items that should have been DNA tested that weren't. There was presumptive DNA testing done. There was not confirmatory DNA testing done. So for us, the case is amazing how much forensic evidence there is that can be tested. For the public, I think that it also will be very encouraging because we're going to find out one way or the other whether the evidence was planted. And we're also going to be able to get test results that we believe will completely exonerate Mr. Avery. So here's the other thing, though. That is, if you're Avery and you're guilty, and your blood really is in the RAV4, what are you thinking? Yeah, let's go test it to make sure it's mine. Like, if he knows that he did it and it's his, I mean, I don't know. What's the thought process here, Maxwell?
Well, you're asking what he's thinking?
Yeah, like, what's your thought process? If you killed her and your blood is in the RAV4, you're gonna say they planted, okay, fine, but you're gonna want all this extra testing done. I don't really get it. Like, if you know that it's your blood,
it's contradictory to his
if you know that it's your blood, and why do you want to test it for EDTA? Because if it finds out that there is no EDTA and it wasn't taken from the vial, then it proves you're guilty. Why would you want that? I don't know. I don't get it. What do you think?
Well, because it's already in jail. I don't know.
Unless he's thinking there's going to be a glitch in the testing and it's going to I going to somehow get him off. I mean, I don't know.
First off, does he understand it fully like that? Or I guess he's someone
I
explaining
don't
it to
know.
him?
I don't know. Is Steve Avery a genius, Johnny? Making a genius?
I mean, he had no choice anyway, though, right?
Well, he could have not hired Zellner. Well, she said she was going to do all this.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And he wanted it done. Like, she's filing motions on his behalf.
Yeah.
And so did Buting. So, like what we read before, like he wants all these tests public.
Maybe he thought it couldn't be his because he had nothing to do with it. And then they said it was. And then he's like, oh, crap, I've cut my finger. That's because he honestly, I guess if he really believes it, he had nothing to do with it, then he has nothing to hide, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he's just trying to figure out, well, how the hell did my blood get in there? Well, I did bleed into my sink, so I guess that's a possibility. And then they came up with the frame up idea.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a no risk for him, I guess. Like, he's already in trouble.
Yeah, but it depends what kind of image he wants. But like, think about it. This is the same guy that preferred to sit the rest of his life in prison instead of admitting the Bjornsson rape.
Yeah.
So like, if he knows that he did it, well, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense either way. Because you'd want to be like, oh, I'm innocent, and not prove that he's guilty, right? I don't know. It's weird.
The more likely he's like, I think is innocent, and then he wants to get out.
So if he gets out, do you think he'll get the $36 million for the first thing, or no?
at 80 years. Actually, well, like, that's if Zellner gets.
Well, yeah, if he gets out, does he get the $36 million for the first one? Because like he got messed up with that, and then he'll get like another $36 million on this one or something or more.
Yeah, probably.
I wonder if he's kind of like planting the evidence himself, so he goes to jail, but he didn't do it. But he could get like this big payout,
so
like $100 million,
double his money. Oh man, he's going for everything.
Oh man, yo, that's so messed up. If he didn't do it and he does get out, man, he's got to get a nice payday, and then just get the hell out of there.
Even like, man, he's.
I know the money doesn't solve anything.
Yeah,
but
even just 10 million or like 5 million, even just kind of, I don't know. I don't think he needs that much.
He doesn't, but they don't need 36 million.
Well,
does that taxpayer money? How does that work?
Insurance doesn't pay for it. So
I know.
So it's like, I don't think those police officers.
Well, one more thing on the EDTA. So this is a Reddit post that I thought was pretty interesting. I think the accusation against the test is not so much faked as prone to false negatives, particularly with elapsed time between drawing blood and then planting and testing. I'm pretty sure no control test has been done with blood held in that sort of vial for that length of time, then swabbed onto a surface like the RAB4, then left for a few months again, then swabbed and tested. I'm also pretty sure there are aspects of the testing procedure. How thoroughly do you swab the blood? How much does it get diluted subsequently? Which can affect the result, which would come into play when the testing is being performed by people with a conscious and subconscious vested interest in a negative result. It was widely believed at the time that there was no reliable test for EDTA, but then the FBI conveniently shows up with a test at short notice, provide the result, and their expert is on the stand the next day. Could someone perform that as an experiment? Get a vial of blood treated with EDTA, preferably old because the blood sample in question wasn't recent, then paint it on a surface, leave it for a few days, and then test it however they did the test. Basically, perform a control experiment. That seems reasonable to do. So basically they're saying that there's no control for it. So if it's a fresh blood, of course it would still have EDTA in it. But does EDTA erode over time or the test sensitivity change for it? So another interesting point is that what color blood turns as it dries. And, I mean, you need control. You need Steven Avery's specific blood. And a lot of these things that aren't really subject to examination. So we can't make... well, that's the whole point. You can't really make definitive statements about anything. So all of it just looks highly suspect.
Yeah, did they test the blood vial? The vial of blood for EDTA?
Yes, and it had it in it. Yeah, that's what I
did?
just read. Yeah.
Okay. I thought they just assumed that it had it in there.
But that was in the vial, though.
Yeah.
What about when it's exposed to air for countless months in cold temp? We don't know. There needs to be a control and a sensitivity control and all of these things. Okay, so I'm going to read one more post, which is it's on flawed DNA science. So this post is, I work in genetics, my take on the flawed DNA science seen at trial. I have serious doubts about the integrity of the DNA tests based on the procedure that the expert described. She didn't take enough precautions against contamination and even petitioned to have proven contamination disregarded. It's just sloppy science. Plain and simple. I'm a biologist employed in a genetics research lab at a major institution, so I work with DNA and blood on a daily basis. Among other procedures, I regularly perform DNA extraction from blood and DNA amplification, PCR, both of which are involved in forensic genetics. I see big problems with the procedure that the expert described. She made some significant errors and didn't take enough precautions to reduce the potential for cross-contamination. I have based this primarily on what appeared on the show. I'm going to go through the transcript soon and see if there's anything more there. I think the problems I noticed should have been enough to discredit at least some of the DNA evidence, if not all of it. The contamination problem. Just so you know, the amount of DNA needed to contaminate a sample is incredibly small. The amplification process is exponential, so a microscopic fleck of DNA can ruin your whole PCR run. This is especially true if there isn't much DNA or none at all in the sample to begin with, since the contaminant could outpace the less concentrated intended target during amplification. In my lab, if any contamination shows up in the controls, the whole batch is necessarily deemed contaminated and must be discarded. Contamination happens. You do whatever you can to minimize the risk, but you can't expect it to go away, and you certainly can't ignore it. I think it's appalling that she was allowed to use a deviation from protocol waiver to gloss over the problems with the bullet test. If I were ever working on a genetic test on which a man's life hung in the balance, I would take extra precautions against contamination that the expert did not. First off, she said that she was working on an open lab bench with plenty of other potential DNA sources close by. This is asking for trouble. I would perform a test this critical in a freshly cleaned, sterile containment hood to reduce the chance of any stray DNA getting in the samples. I would use unopened aliquots of the necessary reagents, change my gloves regularly, and have someone watching me to check my work. She said she was distracted during the procedure and was instructing some new technicians. This was definitely not the appropriate time to do a demonstration. Distraction could lead to any number of possible minor oversights on her part that lead to cross-contamination. Maybe she didn't change her gloves when necessary. Maybe she forgot forgot to switch pipette tips between samples. Maybe she was moving things around too much to show the new text, etc. There was even some speculation that she was drunk on the job, which would cause all kinds of sloppiness. What do you think, Maxwell? Did she look the type of person that would drink a lot, or just before going to get her hairstyle?
She doesn't look like she drinks a lot.
She doesn't?
No.
No?
You think so?
I don't know. I was just asking your opinions. Because this person apparently thinks, he just mentioned that there was speculation that she was drunk on the job. I also have serious concerns about some other science presented in the trial, most notably the EDTA test. I don't trust the FBI's testing procedure at all. Without providing a minimum detection level of their test, any negative result is completely meaningless. So once again, just the main point here, how can we trust any of the DNA evidence, especially who's doing the analyzing? Are we really going to trust Sherry Culhane in any capacity? I mean, if you're contaminating the lone DNA linking Halbach to Avery's garage or house or wherever the scene of the crime allegedly took place, and you're contaminating it with your own DNA, are you going to accept anything such an incompetent person is doing? Not to mention she has the highest error rate of any techs in her labs. There's also speculation. Supposedly she just inherited her position instead of earning it because the previous superior retired and she was just there the longest. So that doesn't necessarily scream competence, does it?
No.
Maxwell is, of course, the king of competency. So when people say, oh, they got her DNA in the garage, do they really? Is that test really that conclusive? Oh, we have the DNA in the RAV4. Do they really? Do we know with certainty it wasn't from the vial? It probably wasn't, but do we know with certainty it wasn't from the Grand Am? That seems more likely. Especially if all it involved is switching a label at a lab. How hard is it really to pretend the samples from the Grand Am are the RAV4 samples with Steven Avery's DNA on it? Not too difficult. We hope you enjoyed another edition of the MINDSHOCK podcast in the Steven Avery series. If you like our podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit notifications to get updates, and if you like the video, like the video. Feel free to leave any thoughts, comments, theories, or request for a specific type of coverage. You can also check us out on social media, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, Patreon. Just check the link in the description. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.
And Maxwell Powers.
And Johnny Mills.
See you guys next time.